Hello and welcome to Warrior SuperCast, the podcast for the Wittenwood School District, highlighting the superstars of the district. I'm Jason Grisgorg, very pleased to have with me Dr. Tamara Ragland, Supervisor of Curriculum and Instruction for the Wittenwood School District. Tamara, glad you could join us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
For our viewing audience this month, of course, we are getting into the final stretch of the year, but
Correct.
That means in the district, we like to look forward, and we're going to be bringing some new things in, or retaining new things, and that being Investigations 3.
Correct.
It is a mathematics curriculum K through 5, for
Correct.
those who aren't familiar. Obviously, if we're retaining, how long have we had this curriculum in place at the time?
We've had this curriculum for several years now. The Investigations 3 is actually the third iteration, and so the curriculum itself was initially designed, first iteration, and it was released in 1994. And the second iteration was designed around the second iteration of standards, which came out around 2005, 2006. And so now we have this updated and third iteration of the standards. We've had the second iteration in our district for several years now, and so it's not new. It is a retention. We're retaining the same curriculum, and it's been updated to accommodate us and meet our state standards.
And obviously that's the means of the reason why we want to keep this going.
Correct.
Is to keep it,
Correct.
Since it does follow that. Obviously, for those who have been watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, we are very familiar with PBL and the new technology. How does this support the new curriculum that we're going into? Because a lot of people are curious as to the change in that, and something that was somewhat based on Common Core.
Right. And so Investigations 3 is a very focused, coherent curriculum, and it provides a balance between critical thinking and rigor, which is something that we emphasize in PBL and PRBL. There's a lot of activities involved in Investigations 3. I mean, they include games as well as assessments, and those can be easily utilized and adapted and included in our project-based learning and problem-based learning framework.
And as you were looking to decide to go to the next iteration, was that in the back of your mind, thinking of the new technology going forward on that?
Absolutely. It's an inquiry-based curriculum anyway, and so when you're thinking of inquiry, you want students to investigate, you want students to inquire, you want to build students' problem-solving and critical thinking skills. And so that is the math content piece of it, and then our PBL and PRBL is the pedagogy piece. So it's a great marriage, putting them both together, and so we are getting a huge bang for our buck.
Obviously, as we're growing, we're looking for these new pieces to add to it. Was there a time that you were looking for something different, or were you really, we're very pleased with Investigations, we want to keep going with this?
We've certainly looked at other curricula as well, and searched around the area and inquired to other districts as to what they are using, why they are using it, how they selected their curricula. And so there's obviously different philosophies when it comes to mathematics teaching and learning, but we are of the philosophy that we want students to co-construct their learning along with their teachers, and so an inquiry-based curriculum provides that best opportunity. And so for us, and with PBL, Investigations 3 would be that best choice.
We can kind of see that there are others out there. Would you ever consider, say, if an iteration of 4 were to come up, would you strongly consider looking at something different at that point, or is it definitely going hand in hand with the PBL?
I think it goes hand in hand with the PBL. I think having PBL actually makes it easier for us to use Investigations 3. There is certainly a very traditional way of teaching mathematics, but that is not the philosophy of the district. We are not doing something that is very traditional. We are doing something that is innovative, that is creative, and we're trying to build our students up and grow them so that they can be great mathematicians, problem solvers, scientists within their classrooms, as well as critical thinkers. So we want them to be able to see a math problem and, metaphorically speaking, pick the tool that best solves that problem. And there's many of them, and investigations allows our students to be able to do that. It allows them to be creative. It allows them to be flexible in their thinking and to decide what tool do I want to use, or problem-solving strategy. Just like if we had a plumbing problem in our home, we wouldn't take a hammer to fix a plumbing or issue like a leaky faucet. So mathematics is much the same way. All the problems are different. And the problems of the 21st century are different than the math problems of the 20th century. We are no longer just doing straight rote memory and computation. Jobs of tomorrow and those of today require different skills. And so we want our students to be prepared for that.
You are listening to the Warrior SuperCast here on Waycross Community Media. I am joined with Dr. Tamara Ragland discussing the Investigations 3, the curricula for the mathematics of the Winton Woods District. We are looking at K through 5, and you were already bringing up the fact that today's and tomorrow's math is definitely not the math that you and I grew up with.
Exactly.
We were talking a little bit earlier in regards to how it melds so well with PBL, with the fact that there are games and new learning techniques. Obviously, this is a morphing process. Do you see this continuing? I mean, obviously, we can look at tomorrow's math, but what is the tomorrow squared math, so to speak? How do you think that will morph later on?
I think that the math of today and tomorrow is just going to require more creativity than our students have ever had before. We have jobs that exist now that didn't exist when I was in school, and certainly when my parents were in school. And so we have to be able to teach our students to think creatively, to think critically, to be out-of-the-box thinkers. And so just doing straight computation and the same computation over and over and over again, that in and of itself doesn't prepare our students for those types of positions.
Do you still feel that there is need for a lot of rote memory, not necessarily doing something that still haunts me today, or times tables that are under a certain time constraint, but do you still see that that is important with the amount of technology we have with us?
Oh, absolutely. But I don't think that drill and kill is absolutely necessary. Because I think that we can allow for technology to do some things and take some of the tediousness out of doing math and focus more on higher level thinking skills, focus more on depth of knowledge. It's the application. Why do I need to know the times tables? What am I doing with that knowledge in order to solve this particular problem? And so, if we think of investigations as a ramp versus steps, math is seen as to be very logical, and that's true, it is.
Sure.
But it's also a progression. And so if we think of that progression as being more like a ramp, we are gradually increasing learning the skills as we go up the ramp. So if we look at the early grades, like kindergarten through third grade, that's the beginning of our ramp. And so those grades are where we learn all of our foundational skills. So we're adding, we're subtracting, multiplying, and we're dividing. Single digits, double digits, triple digits, etc. And do we need to learn that? Absolutely. Because in grades 4 to 6 is the progression of the ramp in terms of apply and extend. So we need foundational skills at the bottom to be able to apply and extend up toward the top of the ramp, because we can't apply and extend what we don't know. If we don't learn those foundational skills, we can't build upon them. We can't grow and move up the ramp.
That is extremely fair. Of course, looking at the fundamentals as we've talked here, let's talk about the practical matter when it comes to the student. Does this iteration help the student? Because math can be one of those subjects where children will shy away because it's scary, I don't want to learn it, it's hard for me to learn. Is something like Investigations 3 able to help ease that fear, so to speak, especially at these lower grades?
It does. So one of the things, in terms of the structure of math investigations, it has 8 units for each grade level, and within those 8 units, there's 140 sessions, if you will. So within those 140 sessions, they're not totally new skills or topics that the students are learning each and every time. And what the curriculum does is allow students to go back and revisit prior skills in prior sessions. And so it constantly spirals and constantly builds. So as they're moving backward to review and reinforce, they're also building upon those skills and learning more. And so they're going backward, but they're moving up at the same time. They're going backward, but they're moving up at the same time. So they get that constant refresh and review of skills as they're continually moving forward.
And as we've said, it's looking at this ramp, again, for a K through 5. We've touched a little bit on 6, but as we go forward from 6 forward, what are we seeing there? Now that they've had that base up to that ramp, where does it go from there?
So the ramp that I'm describing is really called a progression to algebra. And so K to 3, again, is the foundational grades. We use that knowledge to apply and extend in grades 4 to 6. And then grades 7 and 8 is where we truly focus on our mathematical and reasoning thinking in grades 7 and 8. And traditionally, algebra was taught in an Algebra 1 class at the 9th grade level. But our standards have brought algebra down to 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. And it's still taught in 9th grade, but we have different standards there now. So we're expecting students to do more work and to learn more work and do more work. And so 7th and 8th grade is where that critical thinking and mathematical reasoning come into play. And so again, it is constantly building, and we need those prior skills to be able to engage in the critical thinking and the mathematical reasoning that 7th and 8th grade require in order to be successful by the time we get to 9th grade in Algebra 1.
As we've seen from our schooling to today's student, as you're saying, algebra was a 8th, 9th grade kind of thing, and now we're looking 6th, 7th grade. Do you see, as the future goes, that algebra may be very basic numbers to algebra to the next level, almost escalating that quicker so that the student is far more critically thinking by the time they are in high school?
Oh, absolutely. That's what our new standards are now requiring of our students.
It is amazing to see how quickly things are changing in that regards. When we took investigations, you said it was very early on. We've gone through each iteration. How long do you think this iteration will last?
Actually, that depends. Our state and our nation, they have ideas about what we should learn and when we should be learning it. A lot of times textbook series or curriculum publishers will change because the standards require that we change. So every time there is a change in our state standards, lots of times publishers will try to adapt to that. But we had national standards that came out years ago, and so that was the first iteration. And then when those standards went through a second change, that's when you saw publishers adapt around the second iteration of standards. And so because our standards changed, that's why we have this third iteration. And so I would say I can't put a time on it.
Sure.
It just depends on if and when the standards change again, and then they will adjust and adapt to those standards.
And as you can see, things do change, and we look forward to this iteration starting, and of course seeing where that brings us later. And hopefully we'll be brought back to the round table to discuss at least how this iteration has affected the 2017-2018 school year.
Absolutely.
And of course, right behind me, speaking of changes, I've got Rhonda Hobbs joining us. Rhonda, how are you?
Hello, welcome.
Rhonda, you do have some special news to bring to us as well. Rhonda, what is that special news to the district?
I'm so excited to say that Windenwood City Schools has been selected to participate in the Sprint 1 Million program. Basically what that means is we will be receiving recipients of free devices and service from Sprint for our eligible high school students. So we're going to see free internet access at home through a hotspot for up to 300 students for 5 years. So in the end, it'll cover 1,500 devices and service for our kids to do homework at home.
As I say, continuing the learning that is
Correct,
going on
correct.
from home. What a wonderful thing. And that will begin the 2017-2018 school year?
It will. August will be our rollout.
Excellent. I'm sure we will. I know this is just breaking news for us. I know that
Very exciting.
we're really excited, and we'll get in-depth as more information comes.
Yes.
But in a 5-year span, always love to get new information out as well. So Rhonda, thank you for joining us on that. And of course, I want to give you one other bit of news. Since this is the end of May, is the end of the school year, and therefore graduation is right upon us. Graduation for the Winton Woods High School seniors will be May 25th at 7:30 at Cintas Center. If you haven't gotten your tickets already, yes, it is a ticketed event, please contact the main office as soon as possible so that you can cheer on your Warriors for a job well done. And speaking of a job well done, I'd like to thank all of my guests this evening and joining us again next time for another Warrior SuperCast, the podcast for the Winton Woods School District highlighting the superstars of the district. Have a great evening. We'll see you in June.